So today we're going to talk about how to make your own brand standards. And the quick agenda is we're going to talk a bit about us, and then we're going to talk about what does brand standards even mean. And then most of this is going to be pretty tactical. We really, wanted you guys, a lot of times social media and digital marketing can just feel really floofy and you don't really know what to do. And so we really want this to be really tactical. And yeah, so let's get to it. All right, who are we? We would love for you to tell us that. So our little icebreaker is on your phone or your computer. Just pull up Instagram and search at Dive In Digital and do some stalking. We want you to look through it. We're going to give you 10 seconds and give us 3 things you know about our company after looking at our social media, and then put them in the chat. Cool. So does everyone have it ready to go? Great. All right. I'm literally going to count. Okay. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So put in the chat. I'm going to pull it up. Things that Mermaid Obsessed, things that you learned about us. Okay, I'm seeing consultant agency, blues and green, women, positivity, strategy. All right, any other things? Pro tips will help you with COVID messaging. Digital marketing, awesome. Great, you guys did a splendid job. So on our social media, you can tell we are a digital marketing service. And in short, we create digital marketing strategies for companies. As a company, we love to not only promote our services, but we also, we talk about tips for your social media. We talk about social media, internet culture. We also talk about just, we tell stories about our personal life and also our professional lives. And lastly, that you guys hit the nail on the head, we love the ocean. We talk about mermaids and whales a lot and use them in our imagery. Our business is inspired by our love for that, and we have it in our marketing. So what was the point of doing that? By having brand standards, which having, our colors and our key messaging and our mission, you're able to tell a company in less than 10 seconds what you're all about. So that is what we're going to focus on today to help you guys do the same thing. Okay.
So yeah, I'll first say I'm a quick talker. So the minute I'm at a pace where, I'm moving too fast, someone in the chat scream at me virtually and I'll slow down. But yeah, as Rachel said, we truly know and believe from a statistical standpoint that all it takes is 10 seconds for someone to consume anything about you and looking at you on social or other digital platforms. So that's why consistency is so important. So what we're going to do today, physically, tactically together, is give you some tools to create some easy brand standards that post this conversation you can take away immediately. So what are brand standards? Brand standards are rules that you use across your digital platforms to create consistency. And the reason why we want consistency is that anytime someone interacts with you, it's a clear message as to what you are and what you can provide for them. It also allows for us to create some loyalty and awareness and actually measure conversion. So the whole point of this is to create them, not just talk about what they are. So there's kind of 3 areas. Can you next slide me, Rach?
Yep, got you. Oop, just kidding, got you.
So there are 3 standards that we use when developing some brand standards. So the first is audience. So we have to identify who we're being consistent for. Then we have to make rules around the content we utilize to be consistent across platforms. So often with our clients, the number one thing is like, oh, I never know what to post, and I'm told I need to be posting all the time. So this will really aim to give you tools on knowing what to post and knowing what's impactful. And then the third thing with consistency, which is the most tactical, which is how often do I post? Because that's a huge element to remaining consistent. So we're going to walk through these 3: audience, content, and cadence. with you today. And each of these are going to come with some tools and some to-dos that you can take either during or after this presentation, so you have answers to all three.
Awesome. So first we're going to talk about knowing your audience. You can figure out who so when we talk about audience, we kind of use the word audience and then target audience or target customer interchangeably. So we're really talking about not only the people who are paying attention and showing up for you, but the people that you want to go after who, want your services or buy your product, things like that. So the way that we do this is by identifying key demographics, understanding the target market that this person lives within, and then describing their lifestyle. So we're going to do this together, and you guys can answer this for yourself, and you can follow along on your worksheet. Awesome. So the first thing is pinpointing your demographics. So with demographics, we really look at age, gender, location, and we also look at income. We have a little graphic of own who you are. It can be really scary to be like, I talk to one person. Obviously, we know that there's lots of people in your audience, but until you get specific, it's gonna be difficult to figure out how to communicate your services the best. So the more specific you can get, the better here. Any questions along this? And also, again, like Shelby and I both talk quickly, so feel free to slow us down.
And I think it's important to note here, and we're going to harp on it, but the answer is never everyone. So oftentimes we'll run to clients where they're like, it's all ages, it's all genders, they can live anywhere and they can make any amount of money. And even though fundamentally it can be broader, it isn't everyone. So again, if immediately you're like, I need some time to think about this, the idea is to really pinpoint a key demographic profile that's like kind of like a bullseye, right? We can hit it target head on, which is this person, but there's broader elements outside of, they don't have to be the ages of 20 and 35, they could be 20 or 40, but it's really just identifying who's that bullseye person for your service or offerings. Oh, Rachel, we have a question from the audience for you.
Oh, yes.
Questions on figuring out.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so one really tactical, or a couple tactical ways, if your tech or social media is set up like this, is one, Facebook. So Facebook is, even though like we have our own feelings about Facebook, and I know it kind of is everyone's bane of their existence, Facebook does have some really awesome demographic tools. So if you have a business page and you go into Insights, there's going to be audience tabs where you can click through and get the general feel of what demographics, what ages and genders are on your page. Another one is Instagram. You can go, again, if you have a business page, you can look at Insights and then Audience, and it shows you the breakdown of the age bracket, location, and gender. And then the last one, which it depends how many people are on your website. But if you have Google Analytics connected to your website, there is a demographic tabs there that sometimes gives you, so that's where cookies, which is like kind of a confusing term, but it's the cookies that are on your internet, and they basically spy on people and tell you what their age and gender is. So those are some tactical ways. Another way of, I think, figuring out, and with income, to take that like further, is one, on Facebook, they do have actual like estimations of income per household for your audiences. So that's probably the most granular you're going to find of like specific numbers. And then from there, I would take the other elements I was talking about with age and gender and just think broader of like, okay, let's take like the 20-year-old who just graduated, like their income is probably going to be in a certain area. So a lot of this it's kind of like sales projections. It's pretty arbitrary. But once you have your thesis, then when you start testing content, you can start figuring out if that seems to be correct.
I also think too, like really understanding your price of your product, right? So that immediately is going to eliminate certain people from an income bracket based on affordability. We're going to get on this a bit later, But a lot of this comes down to how your product's used and the frequency of how it's used. So that is also going to determine income bracket. So it's pretty easy to identify, for Rachel and I as consultants, we know certain size businesses that can absolutely afford our ideal price point compared to certain size businesses that we're probably a bit more expensive for. So your personal price of your product and ideally the rate in which people are coming in is also can indicate for you income parameters.
Lovely. Okay, so kind of keep going into that world of just getting a better picture of where this person is at. This is where we kind of throw everyone a bone of, you can have different people in your audience, but the key is figuring out what they have similarities. So for us, we do talk to different people. We talk to people who own large businesses, but we also talk to the solopreneur. Those are two very different people, but at the end of the day, what they have in common is a need for our business. And, they want to take their digital marketing to the next level. They've been around for a little while, things like that. So if you can think about, another example is we have a company that is a card game, and we see two different demographics by this game. One, millennial boys, and then the mothers of those millennial boys. So it's two very different demos, but the need is the same. And another way to help us figure this out is, think about the sentences that people often say when looking for your offering. So for us, it's, I don't have time to market my service, or I don't know how to implement, and you can kind of work backwards to get more specific of, what do these people have in common? Okay, and then the last section, this one tends to wig people out the most. And this is really our secret sauce of trying to get into the mindset of your target person. So you're kind of playing house here, where you're really going to put on their thinking cap and try to create a lens of how they look at the world. So the way that we do that is asking lifestyle questions. For us, we what kind of jobs do they have? What does their family look like? What major events are coming up in their life? For example, if your target audience are women who are in their, late 20s, early 30s, they might be getting engaged. They might be starting families. All of those things are just really big life moments that kind of alter how people purchase things. How much time do they have? Big things like that.
And on the worksheet we provided too, so these are kind of our three that no matter your business type, you can answer, right? So no matter what you sell, you can answer these three questions for your person. On the worksheet, we provided an additional 4 to 5 that we select for our clients based on what they sell. And we'd recommend looking at 3 to 4 of those as well. So it kind of just gives you a broader idea of, besides what service you're offering, where are all the other places this person's interacting, so we can meet them where they are. Across all these questions. So these 3 you should definitely answer, but we definitely recommend also poking around at those other ones that we've developed on that worksheet that can be a bit more granular and specific based on what service you provide.
Lovely. We got a question, which is a lovely question. And it's, if you offer different products or level of services, would you have a different avatar for each? I would say yes. That's what Shelby and I do. We have a service that's great for business owners who don't have staff yet. And then we also provide other services where we're working with their entire digital marketing department. So I think that's a great idea, because then you can get even more specific when, you're marketing or prospecting and things like that. Okay, another question. Thanks, Jen. How would you use the information from questions 10? What are 3 to 4 other brands that they probably don't love, or is it they do or don't?
They don't. So we did do and don't. Yep. And a good example of this is we had a client who is a furniture manufacturer, right? And so they built custom flat lay furniture. So for them, their ideal client does not like IKEA, right? They're willing to invest in a better option that fills the same need. Sorry, Rach, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Or, or another one is, this can be, you can take it to more preferences. You can also flip that of with brands they do love, of, let's say that someone likes Patagonia and Williams Sonoma, you can get stylistic indications of what they like to look at, or just like values they have, or lifestyle preferences. And I think that's the opposite of like, where do they not mesh with these brands? Another example is a bride who's looking for a wedding venue, a barn wedding, and then a hotel conference room. They're probably going to have different brides.
And do you kind of go to these negative type questions to get clear on what they do like, or do you use like Facebook ad manager? I don't know if you can do like, doesn't like IKEA.
Yep. That's a great question. Yeah, we do. So we're going to get to this too when it comes to content. But a lot of time for businesses, what you don't like more than what you do like, because it's harder to find the do than it is the don't. So it's easier sometimes to identify like, my ideal client doesn't shop at Walmart before you're at my ideal client shops at Whole Foods. It's kind of easier to identify those don'ts all the way through visuals to copy, right? Competitive brands of yours that use language you freaking hate, but explain the same thing. So we kind of always start with those both so that you easily can identify the good and the bad. And it's just to develop that whole rounded picture.
Cool. Lovely questions. Okay. Awesome. Great. So, a quick just little recap is, as you answer all of those questions, it helps you just create a lens of that target person. So when you're creating content, or you're thinking about, even creating a new offering, you can really get into the mind space of your audience, and show up for them and be able to create content that resonates with them. Great.
Okay, so now that we kind of know the who, we're going to talk about the what, which is, this section really aims to answer the question, what the heck do I post? Which tends to be our clients' like number one thing is, I know I need to post, I'm told I need to post this tremendous amount, but I don't have that much to say. So this is really going to give you an idea of how we can really formulate some strategy there.
I got you. Vanna White's coming. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Letter A. Okay. So in this section, we're going to identify topics your brand's passionate about talking about. So this is really important, right? Because we can technically talk about anything. Like Rachel and I can talk about Game of Thrones as equally as we can talk about digital marketing strategy. But it's really identifying, now that we know who this person is, what are 5 things that we like to talk about that this person is looking for or also interested in. And then we are going to use the big scary word, data, to help you identify what you're already doing that's working really well. When we get to this part, Rachel can speak on it, but this exercise really came from media companies in New York, where they had to identify and create rules surrounding what engages our audience and what doesn't. So I'm excited for you guys all to go through this because it's so helpful. And then we're actually going to create some do's and don'ts based on this information. Okay, so 5 topics that you consistently catch yourself talking about. Again, we definitely recommend doing this as homework for sure, but just to give you an idea for us what those 5 are, that is our services, so what we actually sell, our expertise, which is social media and how it interacts with, the culture at large, things we're passionate about, which is the complexities of being a working professional and sharing our experience with our audience. Tips, like what we're doing for you guys right now, that people can take to implement at home. And then just the overall act of connecting over being a human, and how that connects with all the above. And our 6th wing topic is the ocean. And the idea is, whenever Rachel and I go to create content for our brands, it has to fall in one of these 5 categories. So these 5 categories offer us diversification of messaging, right? We're not just talking about the same thing over and over again. But it keeps us in parameters of consistency. So what we do with our clients is we'll brainstorm, 5 to 10 initial ideas off all of these things. So instead of now you having nothing to post about, you have potentially 25 topics that you have bucketed in a consistent way that makes sense for your audience. Okay, quick question from Stacy. What if you are a new business and don't have data? Stacy, we're here for you. I know the word data is big and scary. I promise this exercise is not big and scary in terms of, we don't need Excels or anything like that. So, but on that point, I think if you have absolutely no data, meaning you have no social presence, you're starting from actual ground zero, a great place to start is look at a brand or a competitive brand or someone who fulfills a similar need that you actually really like the way they do things. And you can do this exercise on theirs. So you can see how, they're interacting with customers or clients. So
yeah. And I would also say too is we might be able to answer this a little more clear in a couple minutes when we start going through the exercise. But we have you during this exercise, we have you rank content against like different adjectives. So you can already choose those elements of your brand up front, even without like, you can kind of do it. You can get ahead of the ball and choose where you want your content to be, and then start creating that. And then you can kind of use it to see how well you did in the future. Cool. All right.
Any questions about that 5 topics specifically? Or are we good there? And obviously post this if you guys have any questions about joining those topics. We have inboxes that are free, wide, and open.
Perfect.
All okay, right. So this is an axes exercise. So I'm going to kind of tactically explain it, but then we're going to hop in and you'll really be able to visualize it. But we are going to pull, and again, homework for now, but you're going to see example of us doing it on our own, your top performing posts based on engagement. Now, let's say you do not have 100 followers on Instagram, so the analytics isn't going to show you this. Pick likes, pick comments, pick something that's important to you that you can visually see within your feed without having to touch that analytics side. Then we're going to pull the top performing posts, bottom performing posts based on engagement. And as Rachel said, we are going to create 2 spectrums based on adjectives that are the opposite of each other. So, candid images versus staged, right? So that'd be an example of a visual spectrum we're going to talk about. And then we're going to do that same thing for content copy. So something like entertaining versus educational. And we're going to start plotting your top and bottom posts based on where they fall in those 2 realms. So yes, we'd recommend when you do this, get a couple of different markers, spice it up a little so we can really see it. But then we're going to create rules off of this. So I'm going to walk you through Dive in Digital's top 3 and bottom 3. So this is what it will look like, right? And you guys will see we mocked you up one of these in your worksheet. But you'll see this vertical, so vertical and horizontal, still working on that, I know. Vertical is going to be your visual spectrum. So some ideas of what that can be is, like I said, candid versus staged, product versus human. So if you mix product photos with humans using your products, if you're graphic heavy and then you also include humans, if you have images you take yourself versus images that are stock photos, if some images you heavily edit and other images you don't put any filter over. Or some images, their purpose is to be very aspirational, and then you have some images that are relatable. Those are just 6 examples of spectrums that you can use on the visual side. On the copy side, there is entertaining versus educational, personal versus professional, selling versus storytelling, long versus short captions, right? I have clients who they write novels and then occasionally they'll have a post that's 1 sentence. So what's the difference in engagement when that's the case? And then posts that have a strong call to action. So if it's on Facebook or Instagram, if it's visit this website, visit the link in our bio, email me, versus posts that don't include any kind of call to action. So for DID, the 2 axes that we selected are human versus graphic. So Rachel and I, those are kind of the 2 types of posts we include in our feed. And then from a copy standpoint, we've selected personal versus professional. So we pulled this metric. So if you guys want to do this on your own, we went to our Instagram Insights, pulled engagement for the last year, and we pulled the top 5. You get the most out of this if you pull 15. So if you're like really looking to go in depth here, 5 is a great place to start, but the more posts you do, the more, glaring things are going to kind of become. So we're going to plot some of our content. So we're going to show our, broken arm here and show you guys what content we've done that rocked and then what content sucked and where it falls.
Yeah. Any questions we can like clarify here, or is it clear as mud? Okay.
So how did you decide on human versus graphic and personal versus professional instead of the others?
Yeah.
Oh, can you please go back a slide, Rachel, as we answered this question?
Yes. One moment. Oh,
Teaser.
oh, me and my swimsuit. Okay. Okay, lovely. Okay, we went back. Yeah, so this takes a little, you have to brainstorm and think on it. So I'm trying to explain this the best way I can, but you do have to think about what attributes does your content have normally.
And how you use it.
Yeah, and it's, another way to look at this is, I used to work for a food website, and so we had actual categories that we showed up in. So we had recipes, and then we had hacks, or we had recipes and lifestyle articles, things like that. And so you could also go by topic, but generally every brand has a personality. And kind of like what I was telling Stacey before is, if you're doing this to build, like, let's say that you don't feel like your brand has or in specific lanes, you can kind of be proactive and start planning for that. So let's say you want to be funny, or you want to have more serious notes. You could choose those two and then start plotting your content and see where it ends up, see what content people are liking. Does that help, Jen?
Okay,
Jen,
cool.
does that help? Yeah.
Yep, she's giving you the nod.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, and I think it's like just knowing how you source it. So if you source a lot of things by making graphics or through images of something else, like that's for us is how me and Rachel source. It's literally either a picture of us and a picture of our life experience, or we're sourcing some type of graphic. So, I will tell you, for any consumer product good client I work with, we do products versus humans. And that doesn't mean, right, this is a spectrum. So it doesn't mean an image only has a product or only has a human. We can plot on spectrum here. So Rachel, if you could go to you in a swimsuit. Okay, this, ladies, I was gonna say ladies and gents, but not here, ladies, is our most engaged post, okay? So obviously visually, this is Rachel. This is a human solely, so this goes high on the human scale. And then the copy is double tap if your Monday felt a bit like this. Tomorrow's a new day, people. So this is highly human and highly personal. Nothing about this is professional. None of it talks about our services. This is there.
Well, okay. For this one, we did put like in the middle between personal and professional, because this is like, we weren't talking about our services, and I wasn't telling the story about how I was like, getting my butt kicked in Hawaii. It was somewhere more neutral in the middle where it could kind of lean both ways. It was like, tomorrow's a new day, both personally and also like go after your work day.
Yeah, totally.
Perfect. Okay,
so second one. So this is an image of the cookbook that Rachel wrote for the media company we worked at in New York. So this is not super human, right? But it's not fully graphic. So it's more human because it's not just a graphic in the feed. We get a little bit of mix, but you see Rachel's little feet. And it's, in a real environment. So you'll see it's down on that spectrum. It's almost to the middle between human and graphic. And then in terms of personal versus professional, you can't see the caption here, but Rachel's talking about how she published this cookbook for our last thing. So that's a professional experience, but the bottom half of the copy is her talking about how she still personally likes to write. So the majority of it leads a bit more professional, but there's still some personal tie-ins here. So that's where that landed on the spectrum. Okay, so are we sensing a theme here? This is highly human. So this is Rachel and I on the day the company we previously worked for got acquired. And this whole caption is about what the day was like when we were acquired. We were acquired by Food Network. And so that day we went to Food Network's office. So this whole story is about how we were like 23, 24-year-olds rolling up in Converse to Food Network and how that felt really empowering, professional. So this is human, but leans more professional than personal in terms of the story we're trying to tell. So does that make sense so far, how we're utilizing these spectrums and how we're starting to see initial trends? Cool. Okay, cool. So now let's go into some 3 that didn't perform well. I'm a huge Twitter gal, and I'm sure tons of you have seen like a lot of people post tweets in feed on Instagram. So cute personality quirk. I do my best work while listening to full episodes of Dr. Phil. This is very graphic, right? This is just words. And again, this kind of borderlines personal versus professional because it's something personal about me, but it's in regards to how I get my work done. So this lives more in the middle there. Quick question from Jen, how do you factor in a promoted post? I would only look at organic here. And when we get to measuring, so at the end of this, I'm going to give some other things that you can measure besides engagement using this system, and that will totally come into play there. Great question.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Yeah, I would try to focus on organic. And for some brands that can get really intermingled, right? Because it was promoted in the past, or like it blew up in the past. So it's always going to be huge. I would try to take it out as much as possible, but really the goal is that you can see what your organic audience loves and then use that for paid, use that for the stuff that you're going to put out there a lot. Okay, we got another question. I know we're using Instagram here, but this exercise can be done with other social media platforms as well as emails, for example. Yes, great question. So yes, absolutely. It really depends on how diverse your content is on each side and also audience. So hold on, okay,
yeah, I would say like the general
Perfect.
answer, you could do this for any platform.
Yeah, it really depends on where your audience is. So the company I worked at, we had pretty active audiences across the board on email, Facebook, and Instagram. So we actually did these not only for each platform, but we did them completely separately for content and visual. So you can go like super far in, just depending on, how much is going on. But yes, Liz, you can use this for emails. I would do specifically, I know a lot of people probably use emails, really focus on,
subject line can be one.
Yeah, subject line would be huge here.
Yep.
Cool.
And then it could literally be subject line versus the actual content within the email. So it could be like subject line and then content type, for sure.
Love it.
Okay. So this is our girl share. We hate to see it. This is a post about we get super meta into branding. So we're actually talking about how we named our brand colors in this post. So this leans more professional. However, at the end, this is about Black Friday. So we talk a bit about what Black Friday shopping we're doing on the personal end. And then this is obviously highly human in terms of visual itself.
Yeah. And a note about this, hint, hint, wink, wink. This is obviously not a Shelby or Rachel human.
Yes.
Something to consider.
Yes. Okay. Third, so this is obviously heavily graphic, and this is personal. This is like a funny Rachel story of like she thought this looked like a cat eye. So we're not really talking about our services here. So this graphic is more personally tied than professional. So
and another thing you're thinking too is like this is white. Several of the other ones that didn't do well were just white. Other things you can pick up on.
Yes.
Cool.
So if we were to look at these just 6 posts, which this is why I'm telling you, like you do 15, this is going to become extremely obvious, is human faces with some professional storylines do really well for us. Again, as Rachel said, you'll see in the note, and when we start making rules that there's exceptions to this in terms of what human it is. And in terms of graphics, that they don't do well when it's a graphic tied to something personal, more professional. So, I mean, if you looked at our feed, it's very graphic heavy. So clearly graphics do work. And this is really an example of why that copy part matters, because inherently it's not necessarily the graphic, even though there's some visual aspects we're going to touch on to those graphics. But it's not that graphics aren't doing well. It's more of graphics when we tie it to something kind of more outside of Dive in Digital doesn't perform well. So now we can easily make some rules off of this exercise, right? So the 3 do's we generate from doing this is we have to use our faces, and not all humans are created equal on our feed. So even when I was looking at, our current feed, the top 6 right now are all graphics, which is great. But even from us doing this, we now know it's great to have Shelby Rachel at least once or twice per grid, that should be a goal that we're trying to maintain. And then we need to share stories about our experiences as professionals. And then 3, we need to tie us rather than graphics to our offerings. That's really like the sweet spot. So some don'ts: use graphics to tie to stories that are more personal than professional. And you'll see from that top 3, and when you look at our top 15, almost all of our bottom graphics have predominantly white backgrounds. So we now know that aesthetic, people are used to, exactly as you guys saw in that first 10 seconds, to see boosts of color from our feed. So we now know graphic content, we need to have some color, and to use pop culture references in relation to our services. So Rachel and I, we love crowdsourcing pop cultural content, and the times we're seeing that we do that, that's more tied to professional and as well. So again, you could go so in depth with rules here, but this immediately right now gives us a structure for when we're sourcing content. We know what works and what doesn't, and in attachment with those 5 topics that we created at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
Does this feel really reasonable for everyone? Like you would know how to do this on your own?
And we know a lot of us are like, Rachel, Shelby, like this is all about your content. I want it to be about my content. All of these pinpoints are just the really small like minutia we're looking at when it talks about brand, right? And it's all, a brand is really this larger picture, but it's made up of all these smaller moments. So getting really getting really curious about why stuff is working, why it's not, that's when you're going to get the best like do's and don'ts of what you need to do. So after 20 posts, you're coming off really cohesive.
And without this, you can't get consistency. Consistency comes from parameters, right? So if we don't formulate that, then we're not going to see consistent feeds across the board.
Yeah. So every time we have done this exercise, it works for everyone. It has never failed us. And so if you are, feeling a little lost or just really excited about this, like we get geeked out, we'll talk about it a little later, but one of the offerings we want to give you guys is just a free consultation, and we'd be more than happy to do this exercise with you. All right.
Okay. So kind of, Jen, to come back to like, what if I want to do this on some other things? Here are just some metrics that I identify as being really helpful. Again, right now, a lot of this is leaning Instagram, but like if you want to do this for email, if you want to do this for Facebook, email me. I can tell you some great metrics to look at, because something that's important is engagement doesn't always lead to every conversion metric, which is like an entirely different talk. But like, our clients usually sell the most off of least posts that don't get the most likes. So that's not correlated, right? Your conversion could be different. For some people, engagement is the game, right? So website visits, you can organize Instagram posts off people who went to the link in your bio from that post. That's a great one to do. So you can see, like for us, I know this isn't the case, but maybe white background graphics are why people click on our website. So we know when we post that, it's not going to get a lot of engagement, but it's going to get people to click. If you offer email button in your Instagram, you can do the spectrum off of that as well. Reach, if you're trying to grow your audience, if that's the priority, reach is a great way to look at and organize this. So you can see which posts are going the furthest. Jen, in Notion to ads, when I do this for clients who we do paid social for, I actually really look at posts that people save, because save posts generate the mindset of like, I want to check this out later, which is the purpose of an ad, right? So that can really help you see if you want to use ad content and not purchase or invest in creating new content. Saved posts are kind of a great guiding light into what content might be great for ads. And then profile visits. So this is another one that's helpful if you're trying to grow your audience, is doing this spectrum based off of which posts led people to come visit my profile. Again, if you have very specific metrics that you would want to do this, email us. We'd be more than willing to kind of give you insight on where to go.
Great.
But yes, engagement's definitely not tell all, for sure.
Yes. And a last little thing about harping on Instagram. The main reason we use Instagram for this exercise is it's the most visual and like brand centric of the platforms. So it's just usually the best like place to have really strong brand awareness. So it can kind of be your template of just like, oh, if I match up what the rest of my brand is off of my Instagram, it's just a really good focal point. All right. Okay, so our last section, remaining consistent through posting cadence. This is obviously the hardest part, is now you know why you should post what, or you know the what and the why, and now and the who, and now we need to know how do we do that. All right. Okay, so how we're going to do that is we're going to talk about really two things. One is our golden rule when it comes to how often should I post and where should I post. Those are by far the two biggest questions we get, period. And then secondly, we're going to go through a series of questions that we would ask ourselves when deciding how much to post, or that you should ask yourself when you're thinking about like, okay, I'm going to commit to X amount of posts a month. What should you be thinking about? Great. Okay, so there's a lot of people out there with a lot of things to say about digital marketing and social media. And a lot of people, you know, it's really easy to take in that information and want to believe that there is a answer that you should be on one place, or this place is best for X, or you need to be everywhere. But the truth is we call BS. We don't believe that there is a one answer to this. And our golden rule is to grow where you're planted. And what that means is where you are naturally showing up, where you naturally have a passion to create content, is where you should start. So if email is your favorite, if Instagram is your favorite, focus there first. Start creating content and consistent brand messaging for 2 months. And once you got it down to the back of your hand, add a new platform. At the end of the day, where you feel the most confident is where you're going to create the most authentic content, and that is what's going to resonate with your people. Similarly, if you try to, and this is what we see across the board, even ourselves, we get into it too. If we try to do too much, if we try to post on too many platforms, we don't post at all because we get overwhelmed or just annoyed or whatever. And so it's really figuring out, it's just being honest, like, okay, I love Instagram. Let's like kick butt on Instagram for 2 months and see what results come from there. And then once you feel more confident, you can apply that to other platforms.
And I will say consistency, you know, when we start working with a client and they're like, social doesn't do anything for us, the number one thing we're going to look at is how consistent are you in posting? So like a lot of times, right, is people get really amped up, like you're going to leave this presentation, you're going to be like, I'm so stoked, I'm going to post on everything all the time. Then that lasts a week. And then now you're posting 1 time a week into none. And then, yeah, we're going to see residual fall off. So before we even get into the actual branding here, consistency on these platforms is where you're going to get favorable results. So decide what's actually realistic and just do that. And then, like Rachel said, when you master that, then we can talk about other platforms. But if you're not consistent, automatically how those algorithms work is they're not going to favor your content. So the consistency is really, that's why it's like, this is the golden rule, is because that's the key to the kingdom. The rest is just, you know, bonus on getting better at it.
Sweet. Awesome. So when we're doing this, the reason there's not a one size fit all answer for not even everyone, but even for service types or industries or anything, or a platform, is there's a lot of other questions you should ask yourself that can determine how often you should be posting. So we're going to go quickly through a few that we would ask. So one is, we ask our clients, you know, how often is their ideal customer purchasing their products? So a great example is, you know, toothpaste versus your wedding venue. Toothpaste you need every month or every quarter, and your wedding venue, you're, you know, most likely buying that 1 to 3 times in your life. So the way that you need to show up there is different. And you can think about that of when, one way we like to look at that is if you're offering something that they're buying every month, you need a really engaged audience. You know, they need to like really love you and be around and want to stick around. So you might want to show up a bit more for them and just more accessible. And then for someone where, you know, maybe they're buying, just need to opt in once. They need to purchase from you one time or interact with you once. it's more, you need to reach a lot more people. So you need to constantly be refilling your customers. So for that, it might be less about how much you're showing up on your platforms, but how often are you showing up on other people's? How often are you tapping into new audiences? Another one that we ask is how are they purchasing this? Can they shop from Instagram or Facebook? Is it, a t-shirt that you're getting online, or is this something where you need to have a consultation and you need to get a quote, things like that? That depends, that gives you a bit more insight of maybe what platforms you need to be on, and then also how they can contact you. So for example, if they need to have a consultation before they work with you, you really want to get their email or their phone number or something like that. So, you don't need to post every day about that. It's very clear where they need to contact with you. Where if you're selling your widget on your Instagram, yeah, post every day, because the more that they see it, the more likely they're going to buy it potentially. Other questions that are different than those other two is, how much time do I have to post? In your business, is your main focus on marketing and prospecting? Or are you, for example, like a maker, someone who makes a purse, they actually have to make that. So their job isn't being a marketer. So it's finding that sweet spot of just being honest of how much in my work week do I have time to allocate to marketing?
A lot of times we find with clients, we don't talk about the cost of content, right? So it's like social media is this free thing, but actually acquiring content, even in time, like for Rachel and I, 3 to 4 hours of posting a month is actually very costly, right? Because we bill hourly. So it's actually looking at, if you don't have the time yet to spend a lot of like hours and hours on posting, that should impact how much you're posting, because that also is a time, money loss.
Yes. Yep. So, how much does it cost? And then that can also be like, where do I source it? Is it something like, can I just take a picture on my iPhone, or do I need a photographer, or do I need to find it on the internet? All of those have time implications. And then lastly is, can I plan in advance? Like, is my messaging always the same? So I can sit down for an hour and then, batch work the whole quarter or the whole month? Or is it something like your messaging is always changing, so you really need to, show up more consistently on a daily basis? Sweet.
Does it make sense how those questions interplay into how you decide how much to post? Because we often find, we're going over a lot of like arbitrary statements, but I think what those questions do really well is they just showcase how we can't tell you 5 times a week, because I don't know if you have the time or the budget to formulate enough content for 5 times a week. I mean, 5 times a week, that's 25 posts. If you use a graphic designer or professional photographers, I mean, that could be thousands of dollars, right? So we just find these questions are really helpful when you identify like, okay, I realistically have 3 hours that I can dedicate to this a month. And I have, we work with a lot of wedding clients. So like, for example, weddings, plethora of content, right? So for them, the time investment's low and the content investment is low. So them posting a lot of times, they can do that, right? But, for Rachel and I, we can't post frequently. So we had to come up with some type of cadence that made the most sense for us based off of our offerings. So that's why we can't tell you the magic answer is 3, unless the magic answer really is just 3 for you.
And at the end of the day, the answer to all of these is, how often can I post consistently? And that is the magic number. Great. Okay, we have a few minutes left. We're briefly going to just talk about, us for a second, how we would love to work with you guys if you guys are looking for more digital marketing help, but we also want to get some questions too. So I'll give you guys a second to think about those. And just briefly, like I said, we would love to just hop on the phone and meet you guys. A lot of you we already know, but would love to talk on the phone, talk through all of your marketing questions. We're happy to go through the exercises in here. I like to say, is all of this clear as mud? And sometimes that's how digital marketing feels. So we want to actually make that clear and help you get some answers. Another thing is, email marketing. Obviously, we talked a lot about social media today, and that is a huge thing what we do, but there's a lot of other marketing arms out there, email being one of them. We're really excited to start working with more people here, and this can be, if you sell a product, we can help you with e-com stuff and just automated flows, but also getting a newsletter out there. Maybe your business is best for a bit more longer form content. So what are the best ways and most effective and efficient ways to use email marketing? And then lastly, you might be thinking like, okay, my business isn't ready yet for this, or, even if you do come on, something we give our clients is a 20% off referral bonus for referring one of their friends who's a business owner to us. So whether you work with us or not, we'd love to give that to you as well, and just give you a little extra cash for sending some awesome business owners our way. Awesome. So any questions? And thank you guys for hanging out with us. Sweet.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, Jen.
Thanks again.
Not that there's a magic answer for this, but if you do have limited time, is it better to be consistent on one platform or do a little bit on multiple platforms?
I honestly think that when the tide comes, all ships rise. So obviously it's like, if Facebook and Instagram, for example, are equally important to you, our recommendations are like, just ignore that. Like if you've been posting there and we're like, just drop that for 60 days. Absolutely not. I think it's more of like, if we really want to go in, when I say when tide comes, all ships rise, is often when we find that secret sauce to one platform, we can identify how to replicate it on others, even if the audience is a bit different. So I would say if it feels manageable for you to be posting one time on Facebook a week consistently for 60 days, and you find a more aptitude number for you to really be measuring success on Instagram, that's where we would go. And there's also a world of like, layered messaging. We wouldn't preach that the same content always should go on the same platforms. But if right now you're really going all in on Instagram, making so one of those posts a week is also going on Facebook could kind of counteract and balance that well. Rachel, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's a great answer. And I think additionally, let's say you feel more comfortable on Instagram or Facebook, whichever one, and you're creating content there, a lot of times people say like, do not post the same things on different platforms. I do think there is a little grace there. And at the end of the day, if it's all about distribution and amplifying messages. So if you can only create right now specifically for one platform, like I think it's totally fine to put that same content on other stuff until you can get more specific about, the strategy on each platform or who's showing up there. Like at the end of the day, it is getting it to more people, and that's also a goal. Cool. Great. All righty. Any other questions? Lovely. Okay, well, I know you guys got the worksheets, but you can find us at letsdiveindigital.com, also on our Instagram. And we'd love to talk more about any of your marketing questions. So thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Rachel and Shelby. This was awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Miss you all. Stay safe.
Thanks, you guys.